After 24 hours of saving lives in the ER, I couldn't even get into my own home. The key turned, but something was wrong. It felt loose, different. Like my marriage, it looked right, but something was broken inside. I stood there on my own doorstep at 2 a.m., still wearing scrubs that smelled like disinfectant and exhaustion, wondering if I was losing my mind. That's when my phone buzzed. A text from my mother-in-law, Linda. "We need $20,000 for our anniversary trip to Europe. Can you transfer it tonight?" "Thanks, honey." Have you ever worked 24 hours straight, saving strangers' lives, only to come home and be treated like an ATM? The audacity hit me like a physical blow. Not, "How was your shift?" or "Thank you for working so hard." Just a casual demand for $20,000 like I was dispensing cash from my back pocket. I tried the key again. Nothing. The lock had been changed. I stood there shivering, but it wasn't from the October cold. It was the realization that while I was intubating a car accident victim at 3 a.m., while I was performing CPR on someone's father at noon, while I was holding the hand of a dying woman at 8 p.m., my own family was literally locking me out of the life I paid for. My phone rang. Sarah, my wife of 6 years. "Oh, hey, babe, you're home. I forgot to mention, Mom had the locks changed for security. I left your dinner on the porch." Security? I almost laughed. Security from what? You know, with all the break-ins in the neighborhood. Anyway, I'm exhausted. The spare key is somewhere. I'll find it tomorrow. Love you. Click. I looked down. A paper plate with cold meatloaf and congealed mashed potatoes sat by the door, covered with plastic wrap. A yellow sticky note was attached. "Your dinner." S. Not, "Welcome home, honey." Not, "Thank you for saving lives." Just "your dinner," like I was a stray dog they occasionally fed. But here's what they didn't know about me. Here's what 6 years of marriage had taught me to hide behind exhausted smiles and "yes, dear" responses. I wasn't just tired. I was done. You see, while they were planning their European vacation with my money, while they were changing locks on the house I paid for, while they were treating me like a walking wallet with a medical degree, I was making calculations. Doctor calculations. The kind that save lives and, apparently, the kind that could destroy the comfortable little world they had built around my paycheck. I smiled for the first time in months. Not because I was happy, but because I finally understood the game we were playing, and they had no idea I was about to change the rules. I ate that cold meatloaf sitting in my car in my own driveway, planning their financial apocalypse between bites of meat that tasted like hardness and betrayal. Every chew was a decision. Every swallow was a commitment to something they'd forced me to become. The next morning, I woke up in my car to the sound of Sarah's heels clicking down the driveway. She was dressed for her yoga class, the one that cost $200 a month, the one I paid for, the one that apparently gave her the flexibility to lock her husband out of his own house. She tapped on my window with that practiced smile she'd perfected over the years, the one that said, "I'm sweet and innocent," while her eyes calculated exactly how much she could extract from my next paycheck. "Morning, sleepyhead. Sorry about last night. You know how Mom gets about security." She held up a set of keys, dangling them like she was training a pet. "Here's your new key. Oh, and don't forget, we need that money for Mom's trip. It's their 30th anniversary, and you know how much family means to me." Family. The word tasted bitter in my mouth. "Of course," I said, taking the keys. "Family is everything." She beamed at me, completely missing the edge in my voice. "You're the best husband ever. I knew you'd understand. Mom was so worried you'd be difficult about it." Difficult. About $20,000. For a vacation I wasn't invited on, planned without consulting me, demanded like it was pocket change. "I'll handle it today," I promised, and I would, just not the way they expected. Sarah bounced back toward the house, probably to call her mother and report that the ATM was functioning properly. I sat in my car, watching my wife disappear into the home I'd bought, holding keys to locks I hadn't authorized, planning to spend money I'd earned while I'd slept in a parking lot like a homeless person. But here's what they didn't understand about doctors. We're trained to work with what we have. When someone comes in bleeding out, you don't panic. You assess, you prioritize, you save what can be saved and let go of what's already dead. My marriage had been bleeding out for years. I'd been so busy trying to save it that I hadn't noticed it was already dead. Time for surgery. I drove straight to the bank. Not my usual branch, but the main downtown office where I'd opened our account 6 years ago, where I'd carefully, methodically put everything in my name because it was easier for taxes, where my paycheck had been deposited every 2 weeks for 6 years while Sarah played house with my money. "Good morning, Dr. Carter," the manager greeted me. "How can we help you today?" "I need to close my joint account and transfer all funds to my personal account," I said quietly, "and I need to speak with someone about removing authorized users from all my accounts." She blinked. "All of them, sir? All of them." While the paperwork processed, I made my second call to my lawyer, not the family lawyer Sarah had chosen, but the one I'd quietly retained 3 months ago when the demands for money had started escalating. "Michael," James picked up on the first ring. "Everything okay?" "It's time," I said simply. "The house?" "Give notice. End the lease." "The car?" "It's in my name. I'll be taking it." "Are you sure about this?" I looked through the bank window at the city where I'd spent 6 years saving lives while my own life slowly died. They locked me out of my own house last night, then demanded $20,000 for their vacation this morning. Silence. Then, "I'll have the paperwork ready by noon." The bank manager returned with a stack of documents. "Just sign here, Dr. Carter. All funds have been transferred and Mrs. Carter has been removed as an authorized user. Is there anything else?" "Yes," I said, signing my name with surgical precision. "I need you to change all my security questions and passwords, and I want alerts set up for any attempts to access these accounts." "Of course, sir. May I ask, is everything all right at home?" I thought about waking up in my car, about cold meatloaf and yellow sticky notes, about being treated like a human cash machine by people who claim to love me. "Everything's perfect," I said. "Finally." My phone started ringing as I walked back to my car. Sarah's ringtone, then Linda's, then Sarah again. I let them go to voicemail. The first message was Sarah, confused. "Hey babe, I tried to buy groceries, but the card declined. Can you call me?" The second was Linda, annoyed. "Michael, there seems to be some problem with the travel booking. Call me immediately." The third was Sarah, panicked. "Michael, what's going on? I can't access any of our accounts. This isn't funny." But I wasn't laughing. I was calculating. 6 years of marriage, 72 months of paychecks, approximately $1.2 million in income that had flowed through my hands into their comfortable lifestyle. Cars, clothes, vacations, yoga classes, spa days, shopping trips, anniversary celebrations, birthday parties, Christmas gifts for Linda's entire extended family, money I'd earned while working 80-hour weeks, money I'd earned while missing holidays because someone needed emergency surgery, money I'd earned while they complained I was never home, never available, never present, except when the bills came due. My phone rang again. Unknown number. "Dr. Carter, this is Attorney Williams representing Sarah Carter and Linda Morrison. We need to discuss your recent financial actions immediately." Already? They'd lawyered up already? "I'm sorry," I said politely. "You'll need to contact my attorney, James Richardson at Richardson & Associates." "Dr. Carter, you can't simply—" "Actually," I interrupted, "I can. Everything you're concerned about is in my name. The accounts, the house lease, the car registration. I haven't stolen anything or committed any crime. I've simply taken control of my own financial assets." Silence. "You need to understand," the lawyer continued, "that marital assets are protected," I finished, "which is why I separated my premarital assets from joint assets years ago, on my lawyer's advice. Everything I've reclaimed today was mine before the marriage and remains mine during the marriage." Another silence, longer this time. "We'll be in touch," he said finally. "I'm sure you will." I hung up and drove to the house, my house, the one I'd been locked out of, to collect my things. Sarah's car was in the driveway, but she wasn't visible, probably inside, frantically calling banks and credit card companies, discovering the scope of what had just happened. I used my new key and walked into the living room I'd furnished, past the kitchen I'd renovated, up the stairs I'd paid to carpet, to pack clothes from the closet in the bedroom I'd been excluded from. Sarah appeared in the doorway, mascara streaked, phone clutched in her shaking hand. 47 missed calls, Michael. 47. From me, from Mom, from the bank, from the credit card companies. What have you done? I folded my last shirt into my suitcase. I've taken back control of my life. This is insane. You can't just... We're married. This is our life. Our life? I turned to face her. Tell me, Sarah, what part of this life is actually ours? You locked me out of this house. You demanded money for a vacation I'm not invited on. You treat me like an employee who happens to share your bed occasionally. That's not... You're overreacting. Am I? I picked up my suitcase. When was the last time you asked about my day? When was the last time you said thank you for anything I provided? When was the last time you treated me like a partner instead of a paycheck? She stared at me, mouth opening and closing like she was trying to find words that didn't exist. You can't leave, she whispered finally. We have a life together. No, I said, walking past her toward the stairs. You have a lifestyle. I have a life. And I'm taking it back. As I reached the front door, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Dr. Carter, this is Attorney Williams. Please contact us immediately regarding urgent legal matters. This situation can be resolved amicably if you respond today. I showed the text to Sarah. 52 missed calls and now legal threats. All in one morning. All because I took control of money I earned. She was crying now, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of rage, of entitlement, of someone who just discovered that their golden goose had learned to fly. This isn't over, she said. I opened the door, then turned back one last time. You're absolutely right. It's not over. It's just beginning. And Sarah, the next time you see me, I'll be the one with the lawyer. Why, I walked out of that house, got in my car, the one I'd been making payments on for 3 years while being treated like a guest in my own life, and drove away from 6 years of slowly suffocating under the weight of other people's expectations and demands. My phone kept ringing, messages kept coming, legal threats kept mounting. But for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. The last message I received that day was from their lawyer. Please contact us immediately regarding urgent legal and financial matters requiring immediate resolution. I deleted it without responding, because sometimes the best response is silence. Sometimes the loudest statement you can make is simply walking away from people who never valued you in the first place. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop playing a game where you're the only one following the rules. 3 weeks passed without a word from me. 3 weeks of silence while they scrambled, while their lawyers sent increasingly desperate letters, while Sarah's comfortable world crumbled piece by piece. But here's what they didn't know. What no one knew. This wasn't a spontaneous breakdown. This was a carefully orchestrated plan I'd been preparing for months. You see, while they were planning European vacations with my money, I was planning something else entirely. Every "yes, dear" was reconnaissance. Every exhausted smile was camouflage. Every time I'd quietly paid another ridiculous bill or transferred money for another frivolous expense, I was documenting everything. The real plan started 6 months ago when Linda casually mentioned over dinner that she expected me to pay for her entire family's Christmas vacation. Not asked, expected. Like I was a trust fund she could withdraw from at will. That night, while Sarah slept peacefully in the bed I paid for, I began building my escape route. I'd opened a separate savings account at a different bank, started redirecting my overtime pay, documented every demand, every expectation, every casual dismissal of my feelings or needs. I'd even been secretly recording conversations when they discussed my money like it was theirs by divine right. But the most important thing I'd done was consult with James Richardson about protecting my assets. Not just the obvious ones, but everything. My medical practice, my retirement accounts, my investments, even the intellectual property from medical research I'd published. Everything Sarah thought was ours was actually legally, irrevocably mine. Dr. Carter, James had explained during our first meeting, your wife signed a prenuptial agreement 6 years ago that specifically protects all premarital assets and any income derived from your medical career. She also waived rights to spousal support in the event of separation due to financial misconduct. I'd stared at him. Financial misconduct? Excessive spending without consent, demands for money beyond reasonable household expenses, using marital funds for personal gain without spousal agreement. The prenup your wife signed is quite comprehensive. Did she not read it? Of course, she hadn't read it. Sarah never read anything that wasn't a shopping catalog or social media post. She'd signed it because her mother told her it was just a formality, and she was too excited about the wedding to pay attention to legal details. Now, sitting in James's office 3 weeks after my escape, I was learning the full scope of my protection. The lease termination is processed, he reported. They have 30 days to vacate. The car has been reported as stolen since it's registered in your name, and you've revoked permission for Sarah to use it. All credit cards have been canceled. The joint account closure was completely legal since you were the primary account holder. What about their lawyer's threats? James laughed. Actually laughed. They're threatening to sue you for access to your own money. It's like threatening to sue someone for breathing their own air. They have no legal standing whatsoever. My phone had been ringing constantly for weeks. I'd finally turned it off after message number 127 from Sarah oscillated between tears, rage, and bargaining. The progression was almost textbook. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression. She was stuck somewhere between anger and bargaining. But I wasn't stuck anywhere. For the first time in 6 years, I was moving forward. I'd rented a beautiful downtown loft. Minimalist, clean, quiet. Everything the suburban house had never been. No constant demands for upgrades, no complaints about the decor, no mother-in-law dropping by unannounced to inspect how her daughter was living and suggest improvements I should fund. My new place had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city where I'd spent years saving lives while my own life slowly died. Now I could see clearly for the first time. There's something else, James said, sliding a folder across his desk. The private investigator's report. I'd hired an investigator not out of paranoia, but out of medical thoroughness. When something doesn't make sense, you run tests. When a patient's symptoms don't match their story, you dig deeper. Sarah's sudden increase in spending demands had felt like symptoms of something larger. I was right. The report was devastating. For 8 months, Sarah had been planning to divorce me anyway. She'd consulted with 3 different lawyers about maximizing her settlement. She'd been transferring money from our joint account to a personal account I didn't know existed. She'd even been documenting my work schedule to establish that I was emotionally absent, and she deserved compensation for emotional suffering. But the worst part? The $20,000 for Linda's anniversary trip was never for Linda's anniversary. It was the final withdrawal before Sarah planned to file for divorce. She'd intended to clean out our accounts, then claim I was financially abusive for not supporting her after she left. They were planning to financially destroy you, James said quietly, then paint you as the villain for working too much to support their lifestyle. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not anger exactly, something cleaner, sharper, surgical precision. What are my options? Well, given this evidence of premeditated financial fraud, we could file charges. We could sue for recovery of the stolen funds. We could... No, I interrupted. I want to end this cleanly. No drama, no publicity that could hurt my practice. I just want out. Are you sure? They've essentially stolen from you for months. I thought about it. About Sarah sleeping peacefully while plotting my financial ruin. About Linda's casual demands for money that was never meant for her anniversary. About 6 years of being treated like a human ATM while they planned to rob the bank. I'm sure, I said finally, but I want the divorce papers to include full disclosure of their plan. I want it documented that this separation was caused by their premeditated financial misconduct, and I want it noted that I'm walking away from this marriage not out of cruelty, but out of self-preservation. James nodded. That's very generous of you. No, I said. It's very final. The divorce papers were served on a Tuesday. I know because Sarah called me 47 times that day. I'd finally turned my phone back on, and the voicemails were a journey through the 5 stages of grief compressed into 24 hours. Message 1. Michael, this is ridiculous. Come home and we'll talk. Message 15. You can't just throw away 6 years of marriage over money. Message 23. I never wanted to hurt you. We can work this out. Message 35. My lawyer says you're being vindictive and cruel. Message 47. I know about the investigator. I know you know everything. Please don't destroy me. That last message broke something in me. Not my resolve. That was titanium at this point. But my anger. Because even in her confession, even in her admission of guilt, she was still thinking about herself. Still asking me to protect her from the consequences of her own actions. I called her back. Once. Sarah. Michael! Oh God, I've been so worried. We need to talk face to face. There are things you don't understand. I understand everything, I said quietly. I understand that you spent 8 months planning to financially destroy me. I understand that the anniversary trip was a lie. I understand that you documented my work schedule to use against me. I understand that you stole money from our joint account to fund your exit strategy. Silence. I also understand, I continued, that you plan to divorce me anyway. This isn't about the money, Sarah. This is about the fact that you never loved me. You loved what I could provide. That's not true. Then why did you change the locks before asking for the divorce? Why demand one final large withdrawal before filing papers? Why document my work schedule like evidence in a criminal case? More silence. Here's what I don't understand, I said. Why not just be honest? Why not just say, this isn't working, let's end it amicably? Why the elaborate deception? Why turn me into the villain in your story when you were the one planning to leave? Because, her voice cracked, because I knew you'd fight for us. I knew you'd try to fix things, work less, be more present. And I didn't want that anymore. I just wanted out, but I wanted to be the victim so I wouldn't feel guilty. There it was, the truth beneath 6 years of lies. She hadn't fallen out of love with me. She'd never loved me at all. I was a means to an end, and when she'd extracted everything she could from that means, she'd planned to discard it while claiming moral superiority. Thank you, I said, for finally being honest. Michael, please, we can start over. I can change. No, I said gently. You can't. Because this isn't about changing behavior. This is about character. And character doesn't change. It just reveals itself over time. I hung up. The final legal meeting happened in James's conference room. Sarah arrived with her lawyer and her mother. Linda looked like she'd aged 10 years in 3 weeks, probably because she'd just realized her personal ATM was permanently out of service. Dr. Carter, Sarah's lawyer began, my client is prepared to accept a modest settlement in exchange for dropping all claims to marital assets. James smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Your client is in no position to negotiate. She's documented planning financial fraud for 8 months. We have evidence of theft, deception, and premeditated misconduct. She's lucky we're not pressing criminal charges. That's preposterous. Would you like to see the private investigator's report? James slid a thick folder across the table. Bank records, consultation notes with 3 different divorce lawyers, documented asset transfers to hidden accounts. Your client planned to rob my client blind, then claim he was financially abusive. Sarah's lawyer opened the folder, read for 2 minutes, then whispered something urgent in Sarah's ear. She turned pale. "What do you want?" she asked quietly. "Nothing," I said. "I want nothing from you. No payment, no settlement, no ongoing connection. Sign the papers, take your personal belongings, and disappear from my life." "But I'll have nothing," she whispered. "No money, no house, no car." "You'll have exactly what you brought to this marriage," I replied, "plus 6 years of living expenses I paid for while you planned to betray me." Linda finally spoke up. "This is cruel, Michael. Sarah loved you." I looked at her. This woman who'd treated me like a son-in-law ATM for 6 years, who'd casually demanded $20,000 like it was pocket change, who'd supported her daughter's plan to financially destroy me. "Linda," I said quietly, "love doesn't plan betrayal. Love doesn't steal money. Love doesn't change locks and serve cold meatloaf. What Sarah felt for me wasn't love. It was greed with a wedding ring." The papers were signed in silence. Sarah cried, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of someone who just realized that actions have consequences, that victims eventually become survivors, and that sometimes the person you're hurting has the power to stop the pain by walking away. As they left, Sarah turned back one last time. "I never meant for it to be like this." "Yes," I said, "you did. You planned exactly this. The only thing you didn't plan for was me fighting back." 3 months later, I stood in my new home, watching the sunrise through floor-to-ceiling windows. My phone sat silent on the counter. No demands for money, no guilt trips about family obligations, no passive-aggressive complaints about my work schedule. The silence was beautiful. I'd learned something important during those months of legal battles and emotional devastation. The opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. And I'd achieved something I'd never thought possible: complete indifference to the people who'd systematically exploited my love for their financial gain. My practice was thriving. Without the constant stress of financial demands and emotional manipulation, I was a better doctor, more focused, more present with my patients. Ironic that removing the people who'd complained about my absence had made me better at being present for everyone else. But the most important thing I'd learned was this: sometimes walking away isn't giving up. Sometimes it's the most powerful thing you can do. Sometimes the greatest victory is refusing to play a rigged game. I never saw Sarah again. I heard through mutual friends that she'd moved back in with Linda, that they'd had to sell the furniture I'd bought to pay their legal bills, that she'd taken a job at a retail store and was struggling financially. I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not sympathy, not guilt. Just the clean, clear silence of a problem that had solved itself. Because here's what I'd finally understood. You can't save someone who's drowning you. You can't love someone who's systematically destroying your capacity to love. And you can't build a life with someone who's secretly planning to tear it down. The last message I'd received from their lawyer had said, "Please contact us immediately regarding urgent legal and financial matters requiring immediate resolution." I deleted it without reading it completely, just like I deleted the marriage, the manipulation, and the weight of being responsible for other people's happiness at the expense of my own. Some problems don't need to be solved. Some situations don't need to be fixed. Sometimes the most healing thing you can do is simply stop participating in your own destruction. And sometimes, when you finally stop trying to save a relationship that was never worth saving, you discover something beautiful. The person you were before you started drowning in someone else's expectations. That person, it turned out, was worth saving, even if I was the only one willing to do it. To